All right, so as the first month of 2022 is wrapping up, you may still be hesitant on that resolution of creating content because you're afraid you don't have the right camera. Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you a few options. What is going on, everybody? Nick Costa here. I hope you are doing well. And in this video, I am going to be showing you a few different cameras to help you create content. I know, another video where someone's going through cameras. But this is going to show you that you don't need to spend a ton of money to actually get some decent footage. So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going over 4 different cameras that I use. Now, the first camera that I use is my iPhone 13 Pro Max. This is actually the primary camera that I use for the majority of the videos that are shot on this channel. Now, anytime I need a secondary camera shot, I would use action cameras. I started out with a GoPro Hero 5 Black and eventually got a GoPro Hero 10 Black. Now, the really great thing about action cameras is that they don't take up a whole lot of space, so sometimes you can kind of disguise them so you don't see them in other camera shots. Now, at the end of last year, I decided to bite the bullet and get something a little bit better, which is the Sony ZV-E10. The reason why I decided to get this camera is because of the fact that when I was editing video between my iPhone 13 Pro Max and the various GoPros, I noticed that the coloring was completely different between them, and I was getting frustrated trying to color grade them, also known as match them so they look the same. After doing some research, it turns out the Sony ZV-E10 has a similar coloring to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which to me means it'll be a lot quicker and easier to get all of this to look the same. Okay, so rather than just going through a bunch of camera specs, because at the end of the day, I'm no camera expert, I'm just gonna come up with a drum solo here on the spot and have all 4 cameras running simultaneously. This is going to give you the ability to see how each camera films, so that way you can determine which one best fits your needs. Now, before I dive into this, a little bit of camera technical jargon. All of these cameras are going to be filming at 4K at 30 frames per second. So as you can see, all of these cameras actually make some really great footage. The difference is that they all have their different quirks. So let's start out with the iPhone 13 Pro Max. When I'm using this, I actually use Adobe Premiere Rush as the application. And the reason why is because it allows me to have a few more options. Meaning, I can set it to film at 4K at 30 frames per second, and I can also adjust the shutter and the ISO. This is pretty important because of the fact that you want your shutter to be double your frame rate. So since I'm filming at 4K at 30 frames per second, that allows me to set the shutter at 60. All right, so let's dive into the action cams, starting out with the Hero 5 Black. You can find these used for a pretty reasonable price. The one thing to consider though is that since this is an older camera, in order to film in 4K, it has to be in the wide angle format, meaning you're gonna have a lot of exterior and you may see a little bit of fisheyeing, which means it's gonna curve on the outsides. No big deal. If you're using anything like Premiere or Final Cut Pro or even iMovie, you can crop the image to get rid of some of that. Now, the Hero 10 Black. This is the newer version of the GoPro series, and in my opinion, so far has been way more stable than the 9, 8, or 7. The really awesome thing about the GoPro 2 is that it does have a viewfinder on the front of the camera, which means you can actually watch yourself as you're filming to make sure everything is in shot. Now with the Hero 10 Black, like I said, it's 4K at 30 frames per second, but I actually have it set for the linear view, which is supposed to be the narrowest view of the GoPro. You can still see, however, that there is a good amount of stuff on either side, so I do have to crop it in a little bit. All right, so now let's dive into that Sony ZV-E10. The really rad thing about it is that it has an APS-C sensor. Now, you might be asking yourself, what the heck does that mean? Basically, the sensor is larger than the ones that you'll find in a smartphone or an action camera, so you're gonna get a better picture. Now, it's not quite as big as a full-framed camera sensor, but it is gonna get you a pretty decent image. Finally, the Sony ZV-E10 allows you to get different camera lenses, which basically means over time you can save up money and get different lenses so you can get better images. Now, for my setup with the Sony ZV-E10, I actually have a Sigma f1.4 16mm lens. What that basically means is that it's shooting in 16mm, so it's pretty much a wider format lens, and it has an f1.4 rating, which means that when it's focusing on something, everything else is going to blur out around it. So as you're looking at cameras that may have interchangeable lenses, the two things you want to be looking out for is the millimeter and the f rating. Millimeter determines how wide or how narrow it is. The lower the number, the wider it is. And the larger the number, the more narrow it is. And then finally, the f rating. The lower that f number, the more blurred out everything around the focused area becomes. So for example, if this lens was still 16mm, it would be in the same shot. But if the f rating was, say, at a 4 or a 5, while I'm in focus, everything else would still be blurred out. It just wouldn't be as much. Now, the one thing to consider when you are looking at cameras with interchangeable lenses, if you're looking at a full-framed camera, you're probably going to end up spending over $1,000. Some of the cinema cameras can even be a couple $1,000s. So the cool thing about the ZV-E10 is that although it is more money than an action camera, I actually bought this as an open box from Best Buy. It cost me $635 shipped to my door. Now, obviously, I had to pay a little bit extra for the lens as well, but as you can see, it does create a really good image. So I would love to get your feedback and hear which camera you like the most, so make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below letting me know. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave an additional comment and I'll try and help out any way that I can. One thing we can agree upon, however, is that all of these cameras make great footage and allow you to get started with creating decent content, some of which you may already own, like a smartphone. So start out with whatever you have and build from there. You don't need to get everything at once. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you've gotten something from it. And until next time, see you later.